بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاء المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون أتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها هبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملت أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالأرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعموا من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في السور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا مهضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متقيون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أحد إليكم يا بني آدم أن لا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نؤمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينظر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشاها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعلكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الفاتحة
صلوا على النبي اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اے مومنو جب مجلس شبیر میں آنا، بچوں کا تمہیں واسطہ یہ بھول نہ جانا، یہ سوچ کے جی کھول کے تم اشک بہانا، مجلس جہاں ہوگی وہاں ہے آتی ہے سکینہ، پانی نہ ملا جب بھی پیاسی ہے سکینہ، پیاسی ہے سکینہ، ہے پیاسی ہے سکینہ۔ اللہ کرے آئے کبھی ایسا زمانہ، ہو شام کے زندہ کی طرف آپ کا جانا، پھٹ جائے گا دل دیکھ کے وہ غم کا ٹھکانہ، بے حال ہوئی قبر میں سوتی ہے سکینہ، پانی نہ ملا جب بھی پیاسی ہے سکینہ، پیاسی ہے سکینہ، ہے پیاسی ہے سکینہ۔ وہ جانب دریا گیا باس دلاور، اور دریا سے مشکیزہ بھرا بازو مضطر، دریا کی ہر ایک موج یہ کہتی تھی تڑپ کر، ہے تیسرا دن ہائے تڑپتی ہے سکینہ، پانی نہ ملا جب بھی پیاسی ہے سکینہ، پیاسی ہے سکینہ، ہے پیاسی ہے سکینہ۔ کام آ گئی جب چھانے لگا بن میں اندھیرا، زینب نے کیا بھائی کے لاشے پہ یہ نوحہ، کیا تم نے سکینہ کو کہیں دیکھا ہے بھیا، ایک کوزالیے دشت میں آئی ہے سکینہ، پانی نہ ملا جب بھی پیاسی ہے سکینہ، پیاسی ہے سکینہ، ہے پیاسی ہے سکینہ۔ جب 11 محرم کو سوئے شام سدھاری، دریا کی طرف دیکھ کے زینب یہ پکاری، عباس نہ مر جائے بھتیجی یہ تمہاری، بے حال میری گود میں بیٹھی ہے سکینہ، پانی نہ ملا جب بھی پیاسی ہے سکینہ، پیاسی ہے سکینہ، ہائے پیاسی ہے سکینہ، اس طرح ستم دھاتے ہے اب ظلم کے بانی، لا کر یہ بھرے کوز بہا دیتے ہیں پانی، کچھ اور بھی بڑھ جاتی ہے یوں تشنا دہانی، بھائی کی طرف دیکھے روتی ہے سکینہ، پانی نہ ملا جب بھی پیاسی ہے سکینہ، پیاسی ہے سکینہ، ہے پیاسی ہے سکینہ، اور محمد وآل محمد صلوات اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد۔
خون رویا ہے سکینہ کو سلا کر عابد، ایسے تلقین پڑھے شان ہلا کر عابد، دیکھ کر خون بھر کرتے کو بدن سے چپکا، گر گئے خاک پہ یہ نوحہ سنا کر عابد، اے سکینہ میں تیری قبر بناؤں کیسے، بولے سجاد، بولے سجاد میں اشکوں کو چھپاؤں کیسے، اے سکینہ میں تیری قبر بناؤں کیسے، اے چچا مجھے کو سہارا دو، خدا را کر قید خانے کے اندھیرے میں بپا ہے محشر، اپنی غربت کے جنازے کو اٹھاؤں کیسے، اے سکینہ اور باپ کے سینے پہ عادت تھی جسے سونے کی مر گئی شام کے زندان میں سکینہ بی بی ارے میں اسے موت کے بستر پہ سلاؤں کیسے ہے سکینہ اور دل تڑپتا ہے لرزتا ہے بدن یہ میرا ایسی تنہائی کے تنہا ہے تیرا یہ بیٹا ارے بابا تلقین سکینہ کو پڑھاؤں کیسے ہے سکینہ میں تیری قبر بناؤں کیسے اور اس کا کرتا ہی بنا اس کا کفن ویلا ذرے ذروں نے کیا دیکھو یہ نوحہ برپا خاک زخموں سے ہٹاؤں تو ہٹاؤں کیسے ہے سکینہ میں تیری قبر بناؤں کیسے اللہم صلی علی محمد وعلی محمد وعجل فرجہ
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم أما بعد قال الله الحكيم في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والتين والزيتون والطور سينين وهذا البلد الأمين صدق الله العلي العظيم. Tonight begins a two-part series of discussions. By the very nature of it, I was hoping to be with you like in previous years that have gone by. Today, as I sit here speaking to you via this medium, it feels strange to me. I guess the last 15 years of my life, around this time I've been away from home, and at least the last 7.5 to 8 years of my life I've been consistently on the road. So having a break and being in London, at least in this period of time, is again very strange, but at the same time one has to look at the hikmah behind why Allah's done this. I guess as you've opened now, or the vast majority of your places are opening up, I remember the hadith of Akhir al-Zaman where the Imam mentions, he says that, look, there's certain signs that are going to come before the last days. And there's one tradition he mentions, which we were discussing amongst the ulama around about the time of March or April. And I remember speaking to a very famous reciter, and we were having what is known as mubahitha. That's what they call it in the Hausa, when you kind of sit down for an hour or 2 hours every day and have a discussion on a particular hadith or a particular subject. So we were bouncing ideas to and fro. One hadith came and we went through all of Bihar al-Anwar, and we were looking at all of the books with all the traditions on the last days. One hadith came forward, and that was that in Akhir al-Zaman, ta'un or waba is going to spread. Basically, a form of an illness, you could say. Though within the definition, it can be any form of natural disaster. But when it deepened, the tradition had talked about an illness, talked about a plague. Said a plague is going to spread, an illness or plague is going to spread. And this linked with a tradition that said that 1/3 of the world will be wiped off because of illnesses. Now look, this is nothing I could say to do with this time. It could be, could not be. There's no prediction I'm giving. That's my disclaimer. There's nothing here that I'm pointing towards. Just giving you the tradition because it made us think. It said 1/3 of the world will be wiped out because of illness. And when this illness does come, the first wave of this illness, people will try to preserve themselves, to protect themselves. And eventually, as it starts to get better, people will think, you know what, it's not a big deal. As they stop doing ihtiyat, as they start coming out again, very soon there will be a second wave. And it says it will be that second wave that will wipe out the 1/3, which we're looking at. It will exponentially grow because of people not doing ihtiyat. And as you know, Ibn Sina and others, hukama within the Islamic world, have mentioned that whenever there's a wabah, 40 days complete cut-off, when they talk about complete isolation, lockdown, so to speak, and all across the world, there's not been an absolute total lockdown. The only country essentially who's seen an absolute lockdown in the way that Islam talks about for 40 days, and not even completely like that, but the only country was New Zealand, and this is why you can see that they're very much preserved. They have maybe 1 or 2 cases, but the whole world has been engulfed. All of our continents of the world are basically seeing a rise of COVID-19. The only continent which is seeing a decrease is Africa. But again, as you know, anything below the Sahara Desert has not actually been monitored. There's no monitoring facilities which is there, and that's, you speak to the WHO. But without going into any more detail, it made me think, and it made a lot of us think, especially within this tradition, that which direction are we going? What should we be doing? How should we be doing it? Remember the hadith where the Prophet says that there's a wabah. For those people in the city, remain in the city. For those people outside, remain outside. I guess partially this is one of the reasons why we've not been able to travel. Besides the fact that there's a travel ban in multiple countries, which also aggravates the situation. But anyhow, the most important thing about this particular era is not the fact that there's a pandemic. We've seen pandemics before come and go. What's unique about the period of time that we live in is the global impact of this pandemic. Never before has the world suffered in this way collectively. And so therefore, if we are to revive, it's going to require a collective come together. Now, what does that mean? You see, it's ironic that Muharram comes in. 1400 years have gone, and we've always been able to congregate in some shape or form. Even in the time of the Abbasis and the Taqiyya, we would congregate, right? 2 or 3 people would come together. Here the hukam is not to congregate. Why? for fear of spreading something to one another. And again, when it comes to the life of an individual, one has to be very, very careful. Ayatollah Sistani and other Maraji have said that if you have this and you go into a majlis or a place and it spreads onto somebody else, then you're liable for blood money. You're basically responsible for their murder, essentially, if you know that you have it and you go to these places. It's very sad, therefore, that today we're seeing a spike, at least in England. Many believers, mu'mineen, are dying because of the irresponsibility of perhaps one or two people who knew that they were suffering and they shouldn't have come into the majlis. But anyhow, again, the reason why we express all of these things and say all of these things is so that we can be careful. Ihtiyat. Why is that? For one purpose. We have a responsibility to one another. We have a responsibility to Imam Hussein. We have a responsibility to each other. We have a responsibility that this is the first time within history, after 1400 years, that there's been a disconnect. And though it affects us and it worries us, or it worries me, why? That tasalsul, the movement that this azar gives us, remember, it's like a domino effect. For 1400 years, this domino has been falling. If for this year, for whatever reason, the domino doesn't fall, it restricts the rizq, the barakat that come onto our nation. That's why it's important for us to do the azar of Imam Hussein. So I remember at the beginning of Muharram, you're thinking, what do you do? How do you do this? Why? If for whatever reason, people are not focused, people are not concentrating, generally you come to the majlis anyway, you come to the masjid, you go to the majlis, whether you like it or not, you're there because it's cultural. 10 days of Muharram come. You just being there, or your children being there, somebody is benefiting from the barakah of the majlis, which means what? Which means a continuation happens. There's a risk, that special risk that's passed, is contained, and then it is passed until the next year. And if you miss this risk, these 10 days, then it never comes back, only on the day of judgment, because every year there's a new risk. So bearing that in mind, when we used to come to the masjid, regardless of whether people were focusing or not, the fact was that there were some people focusing. It's sufficient for a couple of people, a handful of people to focus. And what happens when they focus? A risk comes onto the entire community. Because of the few, the majority of the community benefits. So look at it and see now. We're in a situation where for many people across the world, they were in lockdown. You were in your homes. There's no way forward. In that situation, what is the most important thing to do? In that particular situation, the most important thing here is this, that make your own homes into a majlis. What does that mean? That means then that you have to focus a lot more than you would have done. Why is that? Adab is important. To sit in the, I knew many people when I was lecturing, especially in America, across America, people with their basements, they had black or white cloths. Many people where their rooms became Husseiniya's, Imam Baraka's majlis, a place of majlis. Families would sit together, people would focus. Adab was there. Those who could sit on the floor would sit on the floor. Majlis is not listened to with your legs stretched out, lying down on a sofa, for example. That's fine on a normal day when you're just catching up on knowledge. You want to listen to something. But actually the majlis where it's beneficial, where there's a special risk, where there's a metaphysical benefit, comes when you give the adab, the adab of the majlis. Today, as you know, most of our elders will not say to the youth nowadays, perhaps this is not the case in Allentown, but other parts of the world, they won't say, don't stretch your legs out. Kids are kind of stretching, even adults today are doing that. There's no haram and halal when it comes to adab, when it comes to ishq. But remember, to fully benefit from the majlis of Imam Hussein requires you to give the full respect that's needed. You know, if your 12th Imam was sitting somewhere, you wouldn't be lying down on a sofa. You'd be stood up in attention in the way that you do. Remember, he's the master, you're the slave. And that's how one sits in the majlis of Hussein, to benefit from the risk of Hussein that Hussein is spreading. And remember one thing, it is only for the wilayah that you get this special risk. What does this risk do, right? What does this sustenance do? This sustenance protects you from your enemies. This sustenance removes bala from your houses, tribulation, trials. And today we need it more than any other time. For that, for these benefits to come to us. So this is why I'm just contextualizing the situation that we're in. And I wish we were together so we could discuss this together. But unfortunately, as life is, we are separate. You are somebody who's been traveling continuously for 8 years to come and sit down is difficult. So I know how a lot of people may be feeling. I know how some of the elders may be feeling who are not able, or sheltering, or not coming out, shielding, as they say. But look, there's a special risk. And that is what we're looking for. And this only comes in the Majlis of Sayyid al-Shuhada. We have the best opportunity, therefore, to spiritually climb, to better ourselves. It just requires one thing. It requires a change of mind frame. It requires the heart to be cleaned. It's a revival. Imam Hussein symbolizes a revolution. And the principle of a revolution in its literal sense is to revolve the heart. Very similarly, this is what inqilab means. To revolve the heart. Change the heart of the people. This is what the message of Imam Hussein is. But to be able to change the heart of people, you've got to change your heart, your own heart. You've got to open it up. There's something far greater than just work. There's something far greater than just earning money. What is far greater? Peace, satisfaction. But more than that, ma'rifah wilaya. We haven't even got to the stages of peace and satisfaction. But it requires a movement. Look, there's 6 things that our Prophet says. I'm going to give it to you because it's fresh in my mind. 6 things that the Prophet says. That for you to gain success, to be successful in this world, do 6 things. So the first one is this. So that, look, if you want Allah to love you, there's 2 things you need to have. It says khawf and taqwa. Here, khawf doesn't necessarily mean to be afraid of Allah, because Allah is merciful. But the important thing here is to be afraid of the impact of your sins. Remember, this world is a world of causality. Action leads to a reaction in every single sphere of this existence. But let's say I'm talking now for 45 minutes. Let's say, for argument's sake, I shout for 1 hour, 2 hours. Impact is going to be my throat's going to go. My throat's going to be hurting. Ask many of the ulama on the first 2 or 3 days of Muharram, after they've only spoken for 50 minutes. Ask them how their throat is like. I remember just on the 4th or 5th of Muharram speaking to 1 or 2 lecturers, they're saying, look, our throat's hurting. It happens when you're giving 2 or 3 lectures a day, it begins to hurt. Causal effect. I can say that I'm doing it for Allah. Still, the physical effect of it is going to be there. You keep something to your face like this, you're reading a book like that, it's going to have a detrimental impact on your eyes. If you sit in one position, it's going to have a detrimental effect on your body if you're not moving. Right? If you're running, what's going to happen? If you're running, let's say, an hour every day, the probability is you're going to lose weight. Reason being is because there's a catalytic reaction that's taking place in your body. Fat is burning, energy is needed, metabolism is increasing. In the same way, take another example, go under the sun, spend an hour under the sun. What's going to happen? You're going to get tanned, you're going to get burnt, depending on your skin composition. Take it a step further. These are physical things. And let's take it a step further. Look what you do. God forbid, accidentally you drink poison. It's an accident. You didn't mean it. What's going to happen? Leave it long enough, you're going to die. Take it a step further. You eat too much. Food is good for you, nourishes you. Overeating could give you appendicitis or give you other stomach issues, acid reflux, heartburn. In fact, if you look at it, there are many heart attacks that take place at 3 or 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, statistically. And it could be triggered by what? Could be triggered by what you eat. Hence the Prophet of God has said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has said, that diseases, the vast majority of illnesses begin from the stomach. So for everything there's a reaction. Same thing as this. Zina has 6 reactions, 3 in this world, 3 in the hereafter. Lying also has reactions. Cheating also has reactions. Takabbur also has reactions. Gossiping also has reactions. Backbiting also has reactions. Thinking badly of someone also has reactions. We generally think of people through our own lens, not realizing that maybe our own lens is but blurred. You think the worst of somebody because you yourself are like that. But there are very few people who do husn al-dhan, think good of people. How does thinking good of people begin? Well, first and foremost, when you start thinking good of God. People knock on the door of Allah. Sometimes Allah doesn't answer their dua. They start thinking bad of Allah. Have you not seen it in a patient? You may not have, but it happens. People in a hospital outside the patient's ward. Here's a person saying, Allah, if you don't answer my prayers, I'm going to stop praying and fasting to you. What are they doing there? They're losing hope. They're not understanding God properly. Firstly, have husn al-dhan. The way that you treat God is the way that you're going to be treated. Remember, there's three types of people. Three types of believers, you could say. One who believes in Allah but denies in Allah's rububiyyah. What does Rabb mean? Rabb means this: somebody who nurtures. That is what Rabb is. Rabb irhamhuma kama rabbayani saghira. When you pray for your parents, what are you doing? Rabb, your mother nurtured you. Your father nourished you. That is Rabb. Allah is the ultimate Rabb because He's nourishing the whole of the world. He's had lordship of all of the world. It's through Him that everything flows. From compassion to nurturing. Lordship is with Him. There are people who, for example, believe in Allah as Allah, but they don't believe in His Lordship. What do they say? Well, you've made us, we believe in you, but we don't want to follow your laws. I've seen that myself. In front of me are examples. People who say, yeah, it's fine, we believe in Allah, but we're not going to follow His laws. So what happens? You fall short. Second type of people you find, who actually believe in Allah as Rabb. But when you develop the argument forward, what they don't believe in Allah is the fact that He's just and He's kind and He's merciful as well. Like the example I gave you. I'm going to stop praying and fasting if you don't. You believe Allah is Rabb, that's what you're saying, to pray and to fast. You believe in praying and fasting. But effectively, both of these two types of people are doing what? They're saying, Allah, I want to worship you how I want to worship you. Same thing with Shaitan. Shaitan believes in Allah as Allah, Rabb, Rahman, Rahim, all of those things, all of the sifats of Allah, Shaitan believes in. What was the issue with Shaitan? Issue with Shaitan was this. When we start bargaining like that with Allah, what are we doing? Same as what Shaitan is doing. We're basically saying, I'm Allah. You're here to follow me. You've got to remember, He's Allah. We're here to follow Him, actually. It's up to Him what happens. And remember, just remember these 5 things. And by remembering it, change your mind frame. No, Allah only wants good for you. Allah doesn't want bad for you. He only wants good for you. And it's not easy sometimes to even comprehend that good. And you've seen it, right? The story of Khidr and Musa is there. What does Allah say to Musa? When Musa feels that he's the most knowledgeable person, he says, actually, there's a person more knowledgeable than you. Go to so-and-so place, Majma al-Bahrain, you'll find who? You'll find a person there. The person was Khidr, right? What does Khidr say? He says, if you accompany me, you're not going to understand what I'm going to do. So what does he do? Cases a ship, for example. Drops a wall, for example. Right? Story of the Quran that child who Khidr kills. And Musa doesn't understand what is the reasoning behind this. In the same way, if you were to look from an objective place, our patriarch, Jews, Muslims, and Christians, have one patriarch, Ibrahim. I remember I said to one alim once, I said, look, the way we can bring Christianity, Islam, and Judaism together is if we share within the virtues of Abraham. And he laughed at me and he said to me, have you thought about it? Abraham, the one who, according to the Jews and Christians, had 4 wives, banishes his family in Mecca, goes and wants to kill his son, You look at all of these things, you don't find the virtue straight away, do you? I took a step back and I said, actually, you're right. But no, there's a deeper reality to this, right? And look, at this moment in time, I don't have the philosophy to go into why Ibrahim did what he did. But today, 3 great world religions understand that philosophy. This is why we see him as our patriarch. Fundamentally, what is it? Husn al-dhan in Allah, submission to the will of God. But look, going back, look, 5 things. Remember these 5 things. They'll benefit you. This thing is this. Know that Allah is all-knowing, over everything, has complete knowledge. And secondly, Allah has everything, possesses everything. And thirdly, Allah has power over everything. Right? It's 3 things. Has knowledge of everything, possesses everything, and has power over everything. 3 things. 4th thing is this. Allah's Rahman and Rahim. Meaning what? Meaning Allah doesn't hold any grudges. In layman's terms, we do. Somebody wrongs us, we hold a grudge. Allah doesn't. We wrong Allah, Allah's still kind and merciful. Because to hold a grudge is an attachment. Attachment to the nafs. Is Allah is free of that nafs. So Allah's above and beyond that. Doesn't get hurt. Doesn't hold a grudge. When you're all powerful, what are you going to get hurt about? What are you going to... Allah doesn't do that. But finally, know this. Allah's Jawad. Meaning what? Meaning he gives indefinitely without wanting anything back. He gives in. So when you have a God, and these are not naming 1,000 qualities. I'm not here sitting down reciting all of Joshna Kabir to you. I'm telling you that just 5 qualities Allah has. He's knowing over everything, and he has everything. He has a power of everything. But at the same time, he's merciful. He doesn't hold any grudges. He doesn't look at you in a negative way. And on top of that is Jawad. So when you have a Lord like that, should you lose hope in that Lord? What was the biggest sin Shaitan committed, aside from arrogance that made Shaitan Shaitan? The term Iblis means what? A person who loses hope in Allah. It doesn't matter how sinful of a person is, but you have every opportunity until the moment that your eyes close from this world to go back towards Allah. And that's what's important. Remember, your Lord is merciful. And he's a good Lord. And so therefore try and be a good servant. Understand God is good. He's a good Lord. Question is, are we a good servant? And then at the same time, you have imams. And those imams have also told you to do certain things. We've got to listen to those imams and submit to those imams. Wilaya essentially means submission to the will of your imam. Why are you submitting? Again, the imam has 3 qualities that you don't have. Firstly, ilm kamil, knowledge. If you have knowledge of everything, if you have perfect knowledge, then what does that mean? That means you know, so then you don't need to be told. Secondly, what does the imam have? Second quality. Second quality of the imam is this. Imam is ma'soom, so he doesn't commit a mistake. He has perfect knowledge and he doesn't commit a mistake. So obviously if he's saying something, it's worth something. But finally it's this. He loves you more than your mothers love you. Why? He's warith of rahmatullah alameen. So now he loves you more, he has knowledge complete, and he doesn't make a mistake. Therefore when the imam says something is haqq, bear that in mind. And this is why it's important. So now let me go back, because there were 6 things I was going to give you. And though, believe it or not, this wasn't the topic that I was actually thinking of reciting on. But now that we've started on this, let's open this up. 6 things. So what was the first thing I said? If you want Allah to love you, do 2 things. Fear Allah. Fearing means what? Fear the causal reaction that happens when you do sins, basically. It means when you go against Allah. And secondly, have taqwa. Have piety. What does the Quran say? What does the Quran talk about when it talks about a person who has taqwa? What is a muttaqi? Person who has taqwa. Who's the Quran for? The muttaqi. Who's the imam in the wilaya for? The muttaqi. How do I become a muttaqi? Very simply is this. Try and fulfill what Allah wants you to fulfill. Try and please God. End of story. First thing. You want Him to love you? Try and fulfill what He wants. Well, at least try. You're not always going to be successful. You know why you're not always going to be successful? Because we're finite, we're human, we're limited, we have our deficiencies. Allah knows that. He knows you're not perfect. He likes you how you are, but He knows your capacity. So try your best to fulfill it, firstly. Secondly is this, now the Prophet then continues. He says, and if you want people to love you, so that's God loving you. Now, if you want the people to love you, He says, give them their dues. Don't be too greedy. Give them their dues. What does giving the dues mean? First is this. What you want for yourself, want for somebody else. If you don't want people to gossip about you, you don't gossip about other people. If you don't want people to backbite you, you don't backbite about other people. If you don't want people to hurt you, you don't hurt other people. If you don't want people to judge you, don't judge other people, okay? But let's develop that. That's fine, but let's develop it. What else is there? Give people their dues. When somebody comes to you, there shouldn't be a time when somebody comes to you for a good thing. Look, there's two types of people who come to you. One for something personal. Something personal. And even then, our hadith is there to say that if a person comes and brings a haja in front of you and you have the ability to fulfill it and you don't do it, you're outside of the wilayah of Allah. You've left yourself open for bala to come down when you're outside the wilayah. That's for a personal thing. Imagine if somebody comes to you for the deen. You know, it really embarrasses me personally when I find that people beg. You know, they're not the beneficiary of something, but they're asking, they're begging for Allah's work. And if a person has the ability and they deny that, they're outside of the wilayah of Allah. People shouldn't even be asking. It is the haqq of the mission that people give without somebody asking. And that's when it comes to the cause. If you see somebody in a personal, forget the cause now, in a personal state, where you see that they don't have enough money to afford for themselves, they shouldn't be coming to you. If they come to you to ask, that means you have takabbur inside of you. And Allah is mutakabbir and He'll break you eventually. Let's say if I see somebody on the road who I know is hungry, I don't need them to ask me. If they ask me, there's a deficiency in me. I need to go and help them. If I'm kamil, if I'm kamil, I wish I could go further and say this, that there are certain sifats, there's 4 qualities of a person whose deen is kamil. But I'm not going to go into that because I'm going to then start opening up many doors. Inshallah, we'll look at it tomorrow. What is a person who's kamil in terms of their deen and their religion? One of them is this, that they have that type of akhlaq. People don't need to come and put their hand out. When they see somebody in trouble, they go and they help them. That's one thing. But let me tell you the negative side of that. Negative side is this. If you know a person's needy and they come to you, you have the ability to do it and you send them away, potentially you're bringing afat and bala into your life. Tell you what that means? Translate it to very, very simple language. You're bringing pain into your life. You're bringing trial and tribulation into your life. But Allah, I worked hard to raise this money. But what does Allah say? The more you give, the more you get back. Do you have faith in Him or not? Which brings me to my third point. If you want your wealth to increase, give sadaqah. And that's sadaqah in and of itself. To help somebody, to smile at somebody, to give somebody a good word, just to listen to somebody when they're in pain. That is sadaqah itself. Now that doesn't mean, for example, that the poor alim phone the poor guy up at 11 o'clock at night time because you've had a fight with your spouse. If it's that serious, phone the police. Some of our time, I remember somebody phoning me at 6 in the morning for an istikhara. It was to do with a marriage as well, and I was thinking to myself, at 6 in the morning, what kind of marriage is going to take place? But anyhow, each to their own. That's important though. Sadaqah. Sadaqah increases your risk. Third thing. Fourth thing. Hadith says, if you want to improve your health, fast. There's great hikmah behind it. You know, in this period of COVID-19, if you look towards the month of Ramadan, statistically, if you look into the West, because we only have statistics in the West, the amount of Muslims dying from COVID in that 1 month was really low. And then now it's re-gauging again, especially within the UK. Fast. See that Allah gives you better health. Now, let me take it to a fifth thing. Fifth thing is this. The Prophet then continues and says, he says, look, if you want a long life, do good to your blood relatives. You know, the problem sometimes with us is this. Our egos get the better of us. Conflict takes place between cousins or brothers. Detrimental effect. Lives of children are ruined. What's important is this. If you want a long life, if you want to live long, make sure that you have a good relationship with your family members. And if you can do that, what you will see is that not only is your life increased, I'll give you an example. A person, they say, who has a good relationship with their parents, who's respectful to their parents, you find that Allah fulfills their hajat. This is why they say, if ever there's a problem, right, make sure if you can do, the biggest superpower that you have is do something for your parents. Do something for your parents that they do khalisatan for your parents in such a way, purely for your parents in such a way, that they give you dua. Their heart is moved, they give you dua, and that dua is beneficial to you. Now look, the question can be asked there. Many people who may say, look, our parents have died. Remember one thing, your parents can disown you even after death. Why? When they feel that you're not giving their huquq. Truly, if you can't do a majlis every Thursday, what did Ayatollah Marashi say? This is a marja. Ayatollah Marashi Najafi says to his son, please come and recite Masaib every Thursday night on my grave. Okay, let's say you can't do that. You're Kasada Surah Fatiha though. Let's say you don't have, let's say you don't have $10 on a Thursday, which you could probably wire to Najaf and ask an alim just to go into the haram and recite 5 minutes of a Masaib for your deceased parents. Let's say you don't have that $10, let's say. Let's say you don't have that $20, let's say more than maximum $30, $40. You don't have that to ask somebody for 5 minutes to go and recite Masaib. At least then on a Thursday now, when we have our Thursday programs, you could be part of the sponsors for the sake of your parents. And let's say you don't have time or money for that either. Let's say you don't have money or time to go to the grave of your parent. At least on a Thursday night when you're sitting in your own homes, you can recite a Surah Fatiha and 3 Qul Allahs. Perhaps you can switch on YouTube. Perhaps you can listen to a majlis. You just shed 2 tears. That in itself is sufficient. What happens? Allah will increase your life. Carrying it forward, then what? Then the Prophet says, look, and if you want to be with me, if you want to be mahshur with me, if on the Day of Judgment you want to be with me, if you want to be with me, next to me, then the most important thing is this. Increase your sajdas. So what does increasing sajda mean? It doesn't necessarily mean that you all of a sudden now start doing sajda for half an hour. Look, if you go into sajda in your daily prayers and it takes you 3 seconds to say 3 subhanallahs, and say it slowly and increase it to 6 seconds. That is what increasing your sajda means. Everything comes slowly, right? Allah doesn't want to put a weight on you that you're unable to take. So slowly increase it. Slowly work on it. These are some of the things which we need to be working on, especially when it comes to Muharram. Because remember, Muharram is a month of ishq. As one of our teachers would say, that I look forward to seeing the month of Muharram more than I do to looking at the hilal of the month of Ramadan. Why? Ramadan is the month of ishq, the month of mercy. But the month of Muharram is the month of love, it's the month of ishq. It's the month of connection, it's the month of wilaya. And that's something very powerful. That wilaya fulfills you as a person. It gives you hope. It gives you satisfaction. There are 2 distinct feelings, even for personally for me. In the month of Muharram, right? And the month of Ramadan. The month of Ramadan, you feel a spirituality, a latafat that you don't feel outside of the month of Ramadan. But when the 10 days of Muharram come, or the month of Muharram comes, there's this completely different feeling. And this teacher was right. There's an ishq there. There's a wilayah there that you don't feel anywhere else. So look, I'm not going to elongate this discussion. These are the nights of remembrance of the Shuhada of Karbala. I'm not here to elongate it. I know that it's difficult for people to sit at home and listen. Perhaps some of you on the mosque listening. But know one thing. As we were saying, for every action, there's a reaction. For every sin, there's a reaction. Repentance removes the adhab in the hereafter. But tears for Hussein removes the causal effect in this world. He said on the 1st of Muharram, if we can truly utilize and lock down Azab Hussein, it will expedite very fast to the hall of the Imam alayhi salam, that one who everybody's waiting for. Today's Jews are waiting for the Mashiach. Christians are waiting for the rapture. Muslims are waiting for the Mahdi. Sunnis and Shias both, though they believe in the specifics to be different. Hindus are waiting for the 10th Avatar to come. And every faith, if you look at Taoism, Li Hong, look at other faiths, religions, people are waiting. And the idea of waiting is when people are suffering. What changes destiny? Azab Hussein. Look, in 10 days' time, Arba'in is here. Some of you have been meeting me, or I've been meeting you in Karbala, at least for the last 6 years. Allentown to me is like a family. It's not just once a year that we meet. It's like a family to me. And many of you I have relationships with because of Karbala and Imam Hussein. Many a time we're together. And I would say those are good times. There's a beauty, there's a jamal when we come together and we mourn for Sayyid al-Shuhada. I wish we were in Karbala in 10 days' time. I'm just going to say a couple of things. Zahara, accept our hazah. So tonight we remember the Shuhada of Karbala. You know how they got to the maqam? Because of the ishq they had for Fatima alayhi salam. That ishq is second to none. It opens a pathway that nothing else opens. A unique pathway towards Allah. That's what Hussein's ishq does. Let me give you two stories. Night of Muharram, Abul Fadl Abbas says to Ali Akbar, he says, son, tomorrow there's going to be a big battle. Ali Akbar, I'll take half of the army, you take a quarter of the army, and you leave the other quarter to Ashab Hussein. And when I've done with my half, and you've done with your quarter, we can help the ashab of your father. And at that point, he says something strange. He says, we'll take care of this army of Yazid. Let your father rest. Let him not feel any pain. Let him rest. We'll take care of this. This is what was in the mind of Abbas. You know, the day of Ashura comes. They say when the likes of Habib ibn Mudahir and Muslim and also just bodies come, Abbas is distressed. Why? Elderly people's bodies are coming, and Abbas is alive. Allah, give me permission. Permission is not given. Then what happens? Children's bodies start coming back. Mawla, I raised these children. I can't see their bodies coming back like this. Give me permission. Again, permission is not given. What do you find? You find when Abbas does go, only permission to get water is given. Ali Akbar. All this was a build-up for that. And tonight we remember elders, youth, children, Ashab Hussein. All of that can be encapsulated in one thing. Every single shaheed, when they fell, they called for Imam Hussein to come and help them. There's one shaheed in all of Karbala. If you really read all of the maqatil, one shaheed who doesn't ask Imam Hussein to come and help him. Who was that? Ali Akbar. Why doesn't he say that? He just says, my final salams, father, don't come. My grandfather Rasulullah is with me. Why? Because he knows old father, young son. Old father won't be able to see young son. Look, there are fathers who are listening. Some of you are older. You know that when your sons are of a particular age, what do you want? You want your sons, you're proud of your sons, they can come, they can hold your arm when you're older. When your back is bent, they're the people who are going to straighten your back. You have all of your hopes in your son. You know that your son is going to be there for you. You know how it feels when you see your young son and the strength of your young son. Imagine now this. Imagine if a person's son was to fall onto the ground. Imagine if they were in that position. What does Ali Akbar say? He says, Father, don't come. What happens? They say Imam Hussein does come. Imam Hussein, when he gets there, Khore Amali narrates. He says Hussein ibn Ali's back was such that his back bent. He was on his knees, hands and knees, and he was crawling. Hadith says this. Khore Amali writes. He says, Sayyid al-Shuhada was saying, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali. He writes, he says, I don't know whether he was calling Ali Akbar or whether he was calling his father. Eyesight had gone. He was calling Ali Akbar. I thought a lot as to why did Hussein's eyesight go? Only one answer came into my mind. Ibrahim tied something around his eye so that he didn't see the wound of his son. His Sayyid al-Shuhada was willing to see it. What does Allah do? Covers his eyes so that he doesn't see Ali Akbar when he was shaking, when his chest was pierced open. What does he come and he say? He says, put my hand on that part so that I can pull it out. Right? Why? Because when he hugged Ali Akbar begins to move. He says, why are you moving like this for? He says, because there's a broken spear in my chest. What does Imam do? He puts one knee on the ground of Karbala, holds onto the piece of spear, looks towards Najaf. What does he say? Father, come and help me. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. For the sake of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, and Allah accept our worship. Martin Hussein.
سجاد پہ آئی ہے قیامت بابا، دم نکلتا ہے میرا بردال ابا، تیرے سجاد پہ آئی ہے قیامت بابا، میں چلوں کیسے چلوں سارا، میں چلوں کیسے چلوں سارا، ہی بازار سجا تیرے سجاد پہ آئی ہے قیامت بابا، تیرے سجاد پہ آئی ہے قیامت بابا، ہر شقی ہنستا ہوا کہتا ہے مجھ کو قیدی، بے ضمیروں کی زباں کہتی ہے تجھ کو باغی، میرا ہر عشق تمہیں دیتا، میرا ہر عشق تمہیں دیتا ہے رو رو کے صدا، تیرے سجاد پہ آئی ہے قیامت بابا، تیرے سجاد پہ آئی ہے قیامت بابا، وارث علم ہوں میں، وارث تلوار بھی ہوں، خون عمران ہوں میں، وارث کرار بھی ہوں، میری تقدیر نے منظر یہ، میری تقدیر نے منظر یہ دکھایا کیسا، تیرے سجاد پہ آئی ہے قیامت بابا، تیرے سجاد پہ آئی ہے قیامت بابا، میں نے قرآن کے پاروں کو بکھرتے دیکھا، تیرا یاقوت بدن میں نے تڑپتے دیکھا، نو کے نیزہ پہ میرے ساتھ، نو کے نیزہ پہ میرے ساتھ سفر میں رہنا، تیرے سجاد پہ آئی ہے سائڈ ٹوگیدر ماشاءاللہ، تیرے سجاد پہ آئی ہے قیامت بابا، تیرے سجاد پہ آئی ہے قیامت بابا، جس گھڑی والی سکینہ کو تماچے مارے، اشک آنکھوں کے میرے خون میں بدل جاتے تھے، میری غیرت کے سمندر میں، میری غیرت کے سمندر میں ہے کوہرام بپا، تیرے سجاد ماشاءاللہ مل کے قیامت بابا، تیرے سجاد پہ آئی ہے قیامت بابا، تیرے سجاد پہ آئی ہے قیامت بابا، درد سجاد کا لفظوں میں پیروں کیسے، دل لرز جاتا ہے نوحہ میں سناؤں کیسے، تھا یہی سید سجاد کا، تھا یہی سید سجاد کا یاور نوحہ، تیرے سجاد پہ آئی ہے قیامت بابا، تیرے سجاد پہ آئی ہے قیامت بابا، تیرے سجاد پہ آئی ہے قیامت بابا۔
علی علی اکبر علی 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 اکبر علی علی شبیہ پیغمبر علی علی شبیہ پیغمبر علی علی ای جانم علی علی اکبر علی 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 اکبر علی علی شبیہ پیغمبر علی علی شبیہ پیغمبر علی علی ای جانم نظر اٹھا کے تو ماں کو دیکھو اے بیٹا ای جانم کیوں سر جھکائے کھڑے ہوئے ہو اے بیٹا ای جانم تم ہی تو مادر کا آسرا ہو اے بیٹا اے جان مادر علی علی اے جان مادر علی علی شبیہ پیغمبر علی علی شبیہ پیغمبر علی 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 اکبر علی together ماشاءاللہ علی علی اکبر علی علی شبیہ پیغمبر علی علی شبیہ پیغمبر علی علی ای جانم نبی کی صورت نبی کی سیرت اے اکبر ای جانم نثار تجھ پہ جہاں کی عظمت اے اکبر ای جانم پکارتی ہے تجھے شہادت اے اکبر ای گل حیدر علی علی ای گل حیدر علی علی شبیہ پیغمبر علی علی شبیہ پیغمبر علی 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 اکبر علی 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 ماشاءاللہ بلند آواز میں علی شبیہ پیغمبر علی علی شبیہ پیغمبر علی علی ای جانم ہے ام لیلا کے لب پہ نوحہ بھاویلا ای جانم لہو میں ڈوبا ہے لال میرا بھاویلا ای جانم ہوا ہے سینے کے پار نیزہ واویلا فدا ہو مادر علی علی فدا ہو مادر علی شبیہ پیغمبر علی علی شبیہ پیغمبر علی 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 ماشاءاللہ علی 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 اکبر علی سینوں پہ ہاتھ مار کے بلند آواز میں پیغمبر علی علی شبیہ پیغمبر علی علی ای جانم بتاؤ کامل لکھوں میں کیسے وہ منظر ای جانم بپا تھا کربو بلا میں ہائے وہ محشر ای جانم اٹھائے لاشا کمر خمیدہ تھے سرور صدائے اکبر علی علی صدائے اکبر علی علی شبیہ پیغمبر علی علی شبیہ پیغمبر علی 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 اکبر علی 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 اکبر علی علی شبیہ پیغمبر علی علی شبیہ پیغمبر علی علی ای جانم علی علی اکبر علی 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 اکبر علی علی शबीह पैगंबर अली अली शबीह पैगंबर अली अली मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु अल्लाहुम्मा सल्लि अला मोहम्मद व आले
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين وابن سيد الوصيين السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين وعلى علي ابن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام عليك يا مولى ابن مولى السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء السلام عليك يا سلطان أبا الحسن علي بن موسى الرضا كن شفيعنا وشفيع والدينا في يوم الجزاء ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والزمان السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان أجل الله فرجك وسخر الله مخرجك وزهورك ورحمة الله وبركاته اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد دعاء فرج اللهم كل وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسخنه أرزا تمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد سورة المباركة الفاتحة